The press had been negative and tearing Shirley Chisholm down from the beginning. I'm talking about since before she even was elected to Congress. But David Frost threw that entire frame out of the window with a single interview in 1969. So of course it made sense for him to attend events celebrating her presidential campaign at Diahann Carroll's house in 1972. I mean, it also helps that he was dating Diahann Carroll at the time. Welcome back to part 6 of Behind the Scenes of A More Perfect Party, the night Shirley Chisholm and Diahann Carroll reshaped politics. And the message today is question everything, especially negative media portrayals of Black women in power. The press is so powerful. The press has the power to craft how you think of an individual before you've ever heard them speak or seen them. Before Shirley Chisholm even made it to Washington, D.C., press had been attacking her, framing her as an angry, aggressive, disgruntled Black woman. They had been calling her all of these names for years, since her days in the New York State Assembly. But David Frost took the time to introduce her to a national audience in a brand new way. In 1972, David Frost, he was a busy guy. Frost was hosting shows in both the UK and the US, splitting the week in half by crossing an ocean to fulfill his hosting duties. He was making waves with his cultural and political commentary. He wasn't beholden to advertisers, but to his guests. He would do long-form 30-minute, 40-minute interviews without commercial breaks, which, of course, upset his producers, but it gave his guests space to communicate. He also didn't express hostility towards them the way that they had experienced in other media outlets. And so they had space and breath to communicate their own humanity, their experiences in a way that was fluid and digestible. David Frost was onto something, and he was appreciating things in a way that American media outlets were not. And the way he engaged with public figures in a disarming way, encouraging them to reveal their humanity, encouraging them to relax on his soundstage, which was interestingly decorated. He had orange and purple wall panels. He ditched the interviewer's desk and traded with 2 chairs sitting across from each other, so he was on the same level and playing field with his guests. He also had the audience surrounding them as though this was an engaging roundtable conversation. It was welcoming. It was something new to American audiences. And he brought his personal flavor to it as well. When he sat down with Shirley Chisholm in 1969, she was just a freshman member of Congress. She was brand new on the national stage, but she already had a negative reputation based on what news media and reporters were writing about her. The press deemed Shirley Chisholm as a militant, aggressive, disgruntled Black woman. They called out everything that she did. For example, when she entered Congress in 1969, they were appalled by the fact that she requested a committee assignment that better aligned with the needs of her congressional district. How dare she? The audacity to want to help the people in her district and use her time in Capitol Hill wisely was an affront to them because she was breaking protocol. She wasn't accepting what she was given gratefully. And that tone came across in the writing that they were producing. That tone came across in the headlines being printed. But David Frost welcomed her onto his set with a degree of curiosity about the history she was making, but also how she was navigating Washington, D.C. Now, he sat down with Shirley Chisholm 3 years before the 1972 presidential campaign and the event in April 1972 that Diahann Carroll hosted. On stage with David Frost, Shirley Chisholm could show her true personality, her sense of humor as they talked about how she navigated negotiating with men in Congress who deemed her otherworldly because she could out-debate them, because she could outsmart them with her words on the House floor. Now, it was deeply offensive that they considered her otherworldly because it conveyed this notion that they couldn't accept that it was a petite woman who was Black who was outsmarting them. So she had to be alien. It's the only way they could digest it. She also talked about her personal life with her husband, Conrad, at the time, who cared for her, who supported her, who encouraged her to keep running, expressing that he understood how she impacted the people and inspired them. She also showed her talents when David Frost rolled out a piano for her to perform. She didn't hesitate to perform a jazz number in front of the live audience. It was stunning. It was great. And David Frost gave her the space to do all of that in a way that she hadn't been able to do in other media outlets. Shirley Chisholm also had explicit vision and clarity. And she communicated that when David Frost asked her, will there ever be a woman president of the United States? Here's what she said.
Tell me, do you think there can ever be a woman president of the United States? Shirley?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's coming. I believe that this country is going to be saved by women and students. I happen to believe that. And if the women come together in spite of racial differences, class differences, economic differences, and really back a strong woman, I could see this happening in about 70 or 75 years. I really mean that very seriously.
That's quite a long time, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but you have to give you gentlemen a chance to get acclimated, for the thing that is to happen in the future, because it is going to happen. Nobody will be able to stop. It's going to happen.
Her tone, her clarity, it left me in awe. Because this was recorded in 1969, but she knew what it would take in terms of women and young people uniting and in terms of time for this country to see that. But she knew the power of seeing. She knew the power of example. I mean, that's why she ran in 1972, to break the ice first. Researching the news headlines and the press coverage was infuriating for me. The disrespect was off the charts, and it was consistent. And it was just as consistent in 1969 and 1972 as it was in 2024 with the disrespectful headlines targeting Vice President Kamala Harris. Even in 2020, when she was Senator Harris, running, being asked if she would consider the vice presidential position before a single vote had been cast in the Democratic primary in 2020. That takes some gall. But it also is an extension of the comfort that media outlets had with disrespecting and minimizing the power of Black women running for public office. Now we got a hard pivot to David Frost and Diahann Carroll. Now, David Frost and Diahann Carroll previously met after one of Diahann Carroll's Hollywood singing performances, where they were both out with other dates that night. But David Frost and Diahann Carroll decided to stay out drinking until the early hours of the morning, smitten with each other. From there, they started dating. And by 1972, they had been dating for 2 years. They had been splitting their time between London, Los Angeles, and vacations in the islands that were gaining tabloid attention. They were the talk of the town. They had been hosting parties together on both coasts, and so it made sense that David Frost was right at home and the honorary third host of the event for Shirley Chisholm in 1972. Now, the key lesson I learned while writing this chapter was that there is no space for assumptions in research. There's only space for probing and questions. Because one assumption I had to let go of was who David Frost was. All I knew of him going into this research was that he was the reporter who got under the skin of former President Richard Nixon. He was legendary for that. But digging deeper into his intentions behind his television shows, his format that prioritized the guest stories, his welcoming approach that was disarming, it was revealing. And I appreciated that he was someone who stood out in the press during that time to give a platform to Shirley Chisholm and to someone like Huey P. Newton, who he also reconnected with that night at Diahann Carroll's house. So there's no space for assumptions in research. You just have to take it all in. Thanks so much for watching part 6 of Behind the Scenes of a More Perfect Party. Next time, we're going into the chapter that practically wrote itself, the white feminists.